Hey guys, thanks for joining. Thanks for hanging around here. We're going to try and do a little something during this testimony while they're in a bit of a pause. As you know, this is the famous Wally that was talked about by Mr. Relli. And what we're hearing now with these phone calls, which could not be foundationally supported by Relli because he said, that ain't me. This is the other guy on the line. Joining me to talk about this case and maybe even Karen Reed if we get into it because we do have some pending questions. He is one of 100 America's best criminal attorneys. He is in the Detroit area, Bloomfield officially. He's known as the Rockweiler to his buddies, and he also does the Killer Cross-Exam podcast. Neil Rockind joins me now. It is good to have you on here, Neil. I know you're there. You are. Thank you, sir, for joining. I appreciate it. How are you today?
It's great to be here. I have never watched a train wreck live, so this is a new experience for me.
Yeah, I know. I feel like some of us are tied to the tracks.
We might we might actually need a, not legal experts or lawyers, but we might need a national transfer, what is it, the NTRSB to come in and tell us how this thing is going.
Yeah, maybe medevac. Yeah. Well, we're going to talk in some detail about it. Let's see if they get back to Wally, we'll jump back into that. But, you know, this guy is important. He's a defense witness. It was hard to tell because they were in a break and they weren't showing the camera. I thought, well, maybe the prosecution rested because we came out of that break and JT, Mr. Tacopina, was calling a defense witness. It apparently is a witness out of order, but a key witness here. What do you think about Wally?
This is a really brilliant tactical move that sends a couple different messages. Wally's impeaching the heck out of Relli, and typically the defense would have had to wait for weeks until Relli testified. But they've got him on the stand right after. This is the kind of impeachment that you just can't set up any better than this. Look, you never want to witness, as a prosecutor, you never want to witness to deny that a recording voice was his, say it was AI. That's like blaming the transcript.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
The stenographer got it wrong.
Do you think Joe Tacopina didn't know it was him before he asked that question? I'm guessing the answer that no, it wasn't me or it was AI was icing on the cake.
Yes. Maybe Wally just is unavailable for the next 2 weeks, and so Tacopina's. There are some real subtle little signs that I think that important for people to watch. You could see the judge and Joe Tacopina have
hold on a second, Neil. Let's listen to this one, which is now over. Go ahead.
They have a different relationship when the case started. They're joking about cough drops with the jury, and the judge is. I mean, Judge, hold on a minute, wait. This was Sunday, not last Friday. You'll catch up, Judge. And the judge goes, oh, okay. They have if you're watching, they have a different relationship. Joe was running this courtroom.
Hey, what a surprise, Lewin is chatting.
Lewin's back, and you know
he's in Lewin mode.
Lewin's back, and he's got some orange cones he wants to throw in there to. You know, what do you think the jury's doing right now? You know, the jury's
hate Lewin, I'll tell you that.
Probably thinking the smoothest this case went was the half an hour that Lewin was gone. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, what do you think about our exclusive? We reported today that the judge approached the prosecution and suggested maybe it's unethical to continue this prosecution. Have you ever heard that before?
I have not. And it is the sort of thing that if you're a prosecutor, it would send shivers. I have been a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor for about 3.5, 4 years back in the 90s. It's a thing that would send shivers down your spine. The hair in the back of your neck would stand up. Because when someone says, well, you're proceeding potentially, maybe unethically, means you're putting on a liar on the witness stand. You can't build a case around this guy.
Right. And the point is, I mean, the judge has to almost believe that the prosecution knew he was going to be untruthful.
And knew he was going to be impeached, and he was just unprepared, and he was argumentative. On a break, I have the jury instruction that I wanted to send you for California witnesses on credibility in criminal cases. I mean, it's might as well be called the Relli instruction. It's that bad. You know.
He's going to have to deal with that and his political ties and everything else. Because once I walk away, when I get my cash, the case is way weaker. It's just like a domestic violence case. If you was to hit your bitch and your bitch was to keep on going through with the situation, you go down. But if you're not there, then you're going against the state and it's way weaker.
Okay. Whose voice was that, sir? And what did you understand what he was saying to you there?
Objections going to call for speculation. It's also irrelevant what he understood. His thought is not.
Michael, do you think that this is such a different look for us with Lewin than it was during the Durst trial?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I think even Lewin knows that case was slam dunk comparatively, right? And he had worked that case for 10 years. He knew that case better than he knew his own life.
And every exhibit they had.
And I'm not there. He paid me out via my lawsuit. Oh. I'll walk away. Basically, until they come for the case and find me because I'm on another island. Just relax. You get what I'm saying? They're going to be scrambling to find me because now they have to go against Rocky, the state. And here they have evidence in San Antonio, but it's not going to be the same when we present it to a jury and you don't have a complaining witness.
Mr. Stephen, whose voice was it on that recording that said Tony Park would be able to find me because I'll be going to another island just relaxing? Terrell Ephron, friendly.
Now remember, just a few moments ago, he testified that he never said that.
Yep. This, I mean, if Relli didn't shoot himself in the foot, this witness shoots him in the other foot too.
Let me ask you a question. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm willing to try that hat on for a minute. Is there a chance that the judge said, Paul, that the judge and the prosecutor and Tacopina said, this guy's going to testify to that. Let's not wait. He's just going to directly impeach Relli. Let's not wait this long. I'm curious.
I don't know. I mean, that almost puts the judge at the defense table. I mean, if there's not another reason to have him testify out of order, because it just reinforces Relli's lies and makes him look, if possible, even worse.
I'm just going back to the conversation, the exclusive, the tip that you got, that the judge is basically saying this is unethical. I mean, I just thought that up on the fly. About how
What do you think of this? Once the prosecution does officially arrest, has the judge tipped his hand as to whether he would entertain a directed verdict?
No.
For the defense?
I work with a lot of people, a lot of brands, a lot of celebrities.
Directed verdict motions are
Yes.
easier to win than a preliminary exam as a prosecutor. But
That's my accountants, but
for the people who are listening, because the burden, I mean, you've done criminal and civil cases, and the burden on a directed verdict is what? It's if viewing the evidence in a light most favorable to the non-moving parties, so it would be the prosecutor. Is there any chance, any evidence viewing it in the prosecutor's best light that can make the case against Relli or against Ace?
You said you're estimating your income at 20 grand.
I mean, it would be hard to. What if the judge does grant a directed verdict? He says, I don't believe him beyond a reasonable doubt. No juror could believe him.
Yeah.
Grants a directed verdict of acquittal. That's the end of the case.
Hey, of course, and that's why it's so rare, if ever done, because it takes the case out of the hands of the jury. But the judge, if he truly has ethical concerns, he might actually be doing the prosecution a favor.
Yes.
He's a substantial bit of income for you.
For me personally or my business?
For you personally.
No.
So the interesting thing for me here is John Lewin had every card
$20,000
in the deck
would be significant.
available
He's
to
not paying me
him.
personally.
Everybody
He's
wanted
paying my
him to
business.
have whatever card he wanted. The judge in the Durst case gave him wide
So in the end,
berth,
does the money go back to you?
right?
Not all of it, I have employees.
Oh yeah.
So
And here, mm-mm.
No, and Judge Arnold is doing his best, but Lewin is a slippery devil to get a handle on.
Correct.
how close of a friend?
Speak time to time, not often. Sometimes I don't hear from him.
How often do you talk to him?
Once every other month, possibly.
So you're aware, I just want to back up.
This is
You're
Lewin
saying
cross-examining, in
defendant
case anybody
is
realizes
a
where we are.
pretty big person within the rap world entertainment industry.
You can say that.
Well, I'm not asking. If I'd say, would you agree with it?
Sure.
And would you agree that his girlfriend, significant other, she's even bigger than he is, right?
Sure.
For someone like you, would you agree that being in a good relationship with people like A AP Rocky and Rihanna, that is a positive for your career? Is that right?
Well, I only do business with him. I don't do business with his significant
That
other.
wasn't my question. Those were striking answers. Listen to my question.
Sure.
My question.
Translation: I didn't like the answer.
Pyrrhic victory.
that people like A AP Rocky and Rihanna, given the business you're in, that getting in good with them is positive for your future business.
Sure.
And in fact, that's why as soon as, according to your testimony, as soon as you finish that call with A AP Relli, you called the defendant, right?
Correct.
And in fact, it's fair to say, you did this call because you wanted to set up Relli to see what you could figure out, what might end up helping A AP Rocky with this case, correct?
No.
So when you set this up, you said you wanted to video, you wanted to audio record. That sounds like you had some planning involved, correct?
I didn't set anything up. I was there to mediate the situation.
So you just decided that you were going to call him up, chat him up, and then immediately after that call, even though you only talked to him like every other month, you're like, yeah, I think I'll call A AP Rocky up.
Well, he was calling me numerous times first.
Who was calling you? A AP Rocky?
Really?
That's not what I asked you. Most of us, right?
I mean,
Yeah, you know what?
Oh, wait a minute, he misunderstood.
basically, don't you have
Ask the
a
question again.
What I'm asking you is,
the response to this?
you rarely talk to A$AP Rocky.
I thought that
Maybe every other
ASAP
month.
Rocky was being
But as soon
essentially
as
set
you
up
spoke to
by.
Relli, the first
by
thing
Relli.
you do is call him up and let him know, hey, here's what I
I let him know.
right?
Correct. It's a situation between them two.
And you were looking to parlay your calling Relli to see if you can help A$AP Rocky and ingratiate yourself with him, correct?
No.
Well, let me ask you something. As you sit here today, would you agree that if A$AP Rocky is convicted, that very likely that's probably not going to be a positive for you and your income with respect to him?
No, I'll be fine.
That's not what I asked you. Listen to my question. If A$AP Rocky is convicted, you would agree that you might not be getting that 20 grand a year that you estimate you're making from him going forward, correct?
Objecting.
Grounds?
Thank you, sir. The first question was, it would be positive. He answered that.
That's not a legal objection.
Just state the
Wait, did we just hear grounds from Lewin? Like,
Yes.
like Daryl?
Yes.
What was his name?
Not a legal objection.
From
Quarterly.
the Wisconsin Thanksgiving Christmas
Oh,
parade.
We don't have a
Daryl
legal objection.
Brooks.
Daryl
Daryl Brooks.
Brooks.
Daryl Brooks.
See, real lawyers do apparently say grounds.
First question that is the question.
That's not an objection, Ron. It's not a
I
legal
just did.
objection.
Objection is leading. There it
That's
is.
not a legal count.
Both of you stop. Both of you be quiet. Wait the question. Add the answer.
Lewin is just so smug.
Question, let me ask you something. As you sit here today, would you agree that if A$AP Rocky is convicted, that very likely that's probably not going to be a positive for you and your income with respect to him? Answer, no, I'll be fine. Question, that's not what I asked. Listen to my question. if ASAP Rocky is convicted, you would agree that you might not be getting the 20 grand a year that you estimate you're making from him going forward. That's when there was an objection.
It's a fair question.
You understand the question?
Objection's overruled.
Can you ask it again?
Sure. You testify that you're making approximately 20 grand a year. You said your income's $85,000 a year. I'm just asking, you would agree that if he gets convicted, you would agree that probably does not portend well for you with respect to continuing to get 20 grand a year from him, correct?
Sure.
Sure, is that a yes?
Yes.
So-
Technically, yes.
You would agree that no matter what actually happened in this incident, your motivation, your goal, as you sit here, is you don't want your friend to get convicted, correct?
No, my goal is to tell the truth.
That's not what I asked you. Do you agree that as you
Pretty good
sit
answer.
here right now, that whether or not the defendant committed this crime or not, you don't want him to be convicted?
Technically, no, I don't want anyone to go to jail, so, no.
So what you're saying is that even if it is proven that the defendant assaulted the victim in this case with a firearm, you agree that you do not want him to be convicted, correct?
Objection.
Grounds.
It's a fair question.
He doesn't, he just says objection.
I mean, it's a fair question.
Well,
It is a fair question.
Any grounds, it's overruled. So,
Okay.
so the question can be asked.
Ask again?
Please read the question back.
I mean, I think Lewin has taken a great tact with this guy. I mean, that's what you got to do. You got to, you know,
Try
show
to
he has a
establish
motive
bias.
to lie.
You do not
Yep.
want him to be convicted, correct?
No.
So a moment ago, you just said you don't want anybody to get convicted and go to jail. Now I've just asked you whether you want the defendant to be convicted, even if he committed a crime, and you said, no, I don't agree that I don't want to convict him. Which is it?
If he committed a crime, sure. Justice, right, needs to be served, so.
So as you sit here today, your position is you're just an unbiased person coming in here to do your civic duty.
Correct, I was friends with both of them, so.
Well, you weren't really good friends with Relli, correct? You're much closer to the defendant.
I was friends with him.
Well, you were much closer to the defendant, correct?
Correct.
You said you flew out here, is that right?
Correct.
I assume was that first class or business?
It was business?
Nice lie flat seats, I assume?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't there. So does sure mean that's what happened? What does sure mean?
Sure means yes.
Okay, if you can answer yes or no, but just make it easier with my question.
No problem.
Okay. So you flew out yesterday on a lie flat seat at the expense of the defendant and his lawyer, is that correct?
Correct.
And you came here not because you have any financial motivation, but because you simply want the truth to come out, is that right?
Correct. Because someone said the audio recordings weren't real.
So let me ask you something.
It's a bad habit Lewin has, by the way.
Those were snippets from
What's that?
approximately
Let me ask you something.
30
Yeah.
minutes of conversation.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you something. That's just preface to everything.
And during those 30 minutes of conversation, at any point in time, did Relli ever tell you that the shooting did not happen?
No.
Did he ever tell you at any point in time, you know what? Yeah, I'm trying to get his money, but I made the whole thing up.
No.
In fact, isn't it true that what he was telling you was that that man shot at him and Relli wanted to make sure that he got his for what happened? Is that correct?
That's what really said.
And you weren't there, is that correct?
No.
It's a pretty good line across.
Correct?
Yeah, I think he's doing a good job.
I think he
You
tied it up pretty well with some.
And you don't have any
Pretty cleanly.
idea whether or not this incident happened or didn't happen.
No.
So here's my, did you ever ask Relli Hey, I'm sorry, did you ever ask the defendant, hey, listen, this guy's saying you shot at him. You ever ask him what happened?
Objection relevance.
You ever ask him what happened?
I don't recall.
So, you are having conversations with Relli, which you're taping, and then immediately calling the defendant to report what happened, and you're telling me you've never asked the man, hey, did you cap 2 rounds at him?
I said I don't recall.
Well, is that something you think you remember?
3 years ago, I don't recall.
So you're telling, I just want to make sure I understand this. Your testimony is, yeah, I'm recording him and I'm well aware of this situation that happened. And I've talked to the defendant about it. I talk to him every couple of months. But I've never asked him, hey, Relli's accusing you of shooting him. Did you do it? You never asked him that.
I don't recall, no.
Well, isn't it true? You didn't ask him that because you don't want to know the answer.
Objection, Your Honor. The state's testimony says it doesn't recall.
It's cross-examination.
Yeah, it's a fair question of cross-examination.
Isn't it true that you didn't ask him that question because you don't want to know the answer?
Like I said, I don't recall, but I might have asked him.
So now you're saying you might
You know,
have
what's
asked
interesting
him
is
if you shot Relli, but you don't
You know,
remember the answer.
it's a pretty good line of cross.
Me asking him that question.
You can tell the witnesses get uncomfortable when they're,
Yep.
Let me be clear.
and some of the
I
stuff
wanna
that
know,
Lewin is doing is at
has the
least are
defendant
things that they're
ever
going to be able to
discussed
argue.
anything about
Or
the shooting?
similar answers in a way to
No.
what Relli gave. Maybe not as bad.
So,
We're going
then
to blame
your
the
answer
passage
would
of
be
time. I
you
don't
never
remember.
asked him
Maybe
about
changing
it.
an
Would be
answer
a
here or there.
No, correct.
Sure, correct, so.
Convenient
And why
amnesia.
isn't a moment ago you just said, I don't know?
I think the biggest
I
problem
don't
that
remember.
Relli has
Because I don't
is
recall.
that
Do you understand the difference
he
between no
pretended
and I
it
don't
wasn't him
recall?
on the recording.
Yes.
So you have this
no,
guy
would you agree
motivated
he
perhaps to help
absolutely never mentioned
the
anything?
defendant,
And I don't recall
but
would be,
Relli's
I'm not
trying to
sure.
take himself out of the entire
Would you agree with
conversation.
that, those definitions?
We can agree to that.
And my
And I,
question
and I
is,
think the part about the
don't you
phone
think
call,
that as you're
it
taking
was just it's an
Relli
absurd answer.
for somewhere between
Yes,
20 and
Lewin's
30
trying to
minutes,
set up that there's a motive
getting
or a
information
bias on this
about
witness's part.
this incident,
But they do have
and about
those
what he
recordings
intends
that
to
are,
do, and then calling the
ways
defendant
indisputable.
back immediately to report what happened, that you might have had a conversation with him about, hey, dude, what actually happened? Did you shoot the guy? You're saying that didn't happen, you never asked?
Never asked.
Are you curious?
No.
So you don't have any interest at all as to whether or not the defendant actually shot at Relli?
Doesn't make a relevancy objection again.
Sergeant Manager. Go on to another subject.
it's also interesting because,
So,
you know, this witness is not going to come across as unlikable
your
as
position
Relli. And
is that
I think Lewin has to be careful. I mean, he's made his
to
point.
Relli,
Question
and
is he
telling you about what he intends
going to
do
push it too far, which
in
is
terms of getting money from the defendant. Would you agree?
Yes.
Did you ever say to Relli during any of these calls that you recorded, hey Relli, how come you're getting money from him if the shooting never happened?
Never asked that.
plus this is not
Don't you think
realistic.
that would be a
This is not how
legitimate question
people
to
talk
ask
to
them?
each other.
Right.
No, I was just
They don't.
saying it's not-
Hey, did you really do
Well,
it,
in fact, you
Rocky?
would agree that
Did you
there
really?
is nothing
There's some truth to it.
that Terrell has
Not how
ever
people.
said
You wouldn't even say that to a friend. You would
Nothing.
just. You're in the middle, and you would just.
that in any way indicates
Yeah.
Guy saying he's going to go to an island and he's going to
Did
get
not
money
happen.
and
You
be
agree?
absent from a prosecution.
Would
You
you
would think.
also
I
agree
think I
that
ought to tell my friend
whatever
about that.
efforts Relli makes after the shooting, however much money he asks for, whatever calls he makes, does that change what happened during the incident?
Objection. Improper question.
What's that?
Sergeant Manager.
Well, let me ask you something. I'm asking you. You're taping him and you're reporting that conversation to the defendant. I'm asking you, is there anything about Relli's statements about suing the defendant, trying to get $30 million. Is there anything about those statements that you are aware of that changes what actually happened the night of the incident?
No, I think I answered that.
So would you agree that whether or not Relli sues for $1, 20 million, 100 million, 20 gajillion dollars, that in the end, either the shooting happened or it didn't? Would you agree?
Yes.
And it's your further testimony that despite all that, you've never had one conversation or asked him one question, the defendant, about what actually transpired?
Objection as to nature.
How many calls in total did you record?
2.
2 calls? Now, you said that you were upset because the idea that Relli was coming into court, you said you were offended by his line. Is that correct?
Yes.
When you were taping his calls, did he know you were taping?
No.
Do you think that friends tape other friends' phone calls?
Sometimes they can.
I'm asking you. I'm not asking you physically. I assume, sir, that if somebody wants to record a call, I didn't ask whether it's technically possible. I'm asking you, do you think that a friend records their friend's phone calls when that person doesn't know?
Objection, you gave an answer.
That's not a legal objection. It's not
It's
located.
an technical question. It's speculation. What friends do is irrelevant. Ask another question.
You called Terrell a friend of yours, correct?
Yes.
Do you think that it was being a friend of his to tape his phone calls without his knowledge?
Yes.
How was that being a friend to Terrell?
Sometimes friends do things like that.
You mean sometimes friends betray friends by taping their calls and then calling other people to report what they found? Is that what you mean?
That's what we call betrayal.
Argumentative.
So, when is the last time that you had spoken to the
Judge has had
defendant
enough.
prior to immediately calling him after the May 2022 phone call?
I didn't talk to him.
What's that?
I said I didn't talk to him prior to Relli calling me.
No, so, well, you talked to him before, so I'm asking the last time. When did the last time been?
I'm not sure.
When is the first time? So, when did you first find out about the whole incident, the shooting? When did you find out?
From
about it?
Relli in 2022.
No, I'm not asking when you found out from Relli. When did you first hear about the shooting?
When Relli told me.
So you're saying you had never heard about this shooting that happened to your friend, A$AP Rocky, until May of 2022?
Correct.
So you're saying you speak to him every other month. You're aware that that shooting, that incident happened in November 2021, right?
Yes.
And you're saying that even though your friend was involved in a shooting, lead shooting, A$AP Rocky, you didn't hear about it for 5 months?
I heard about it from Relli first.
And you said the first time you heard about it from Relli was in May of 2022. That's what you just testified to, correct?
Yes.
So when's the first time you talked to Relli after November of 2021?
I'm not sure.
Well, give me an estimate of when the last time you spoke to him was.
I said I'm not sure.
Well, here's my question. You would agree that the shooting involving A$AP Rocky, that was a big media event. Would you agree?
Yes.
Didn't you say, wait, what do you do for a living? Well, let me just get this right. You basically work on people's boosting their media profile, correct?
It's not what I do for a living.
What do you do for a living?
I'm not sure if you heard, but I run a technology agency and we build websites, software for brands, creatives, artists, musicians.
Right, and you testified, quote,
And part of that, if you want me to get into it, sometimes people offer things like Relli did to help with their social media.
You are very involved in the rap and entertainment world, correct?
The
No, I'm not a rapper. I don't make music. I don't produce
comparison, the juxtaposition between the way
Are you involved in the work
Wally
of
comes
individuals
across versus
in
how
music, rap, and entertainment?
Relli came across is really stark.
Yeah.
10%, 20% of my client
Even
list.
if they're able to ding him
10% or 20% of your
just with a
client
couple of
list.
contradictions or that he had a
A$AP
bias,
Rocky is approximately
but the reality is that
25%
he's very composed. He has his legs sitting very relaxed. He's keeping his voice calm.
You said, is my client list rappers or in the music industry? Big question.
So here's what I'm asking you. You're telling me you never heard of this incident until May of 2022.
Until Relli told me.
You're telling me that Relli is contacting you saying he wants you to lose.
You ever heard of the phrase, Michael, gilding the lily when it comes to cross-examining witnesses?
Sure. Sure.
So
Get some
wouldn't
good
it be your
information,
job
and then
to
you
be
can't leave it alone.
monitoring
You
what's
want
going
to
on in the media
drive it home, and then you
with
sort of undo it.
individuals that you're talking to?
No, it's not my job.
You feel like Lewin's done
Your sworn
a decent job of cross-examination, but he could take it
Relli
too
told me
far.
about it for the first time
Yeah,
in May
yeah, and he's reaching the point of diminished returns.
That's the first
Exactly.
I heard
With the judge
of
flipping his
this
pencil.
shooting, correct?
Yes.
Like,
Let me
okay,
ask you, given what you
you've heard
do
what there
for a
is about
living,
this guy.
Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yes.
So let me ask you something on the sidebar. This doesn't be on the record.
Oh, goody.
There's a-
Okay, so let's talk about this real quick, Neil. It seems to me, the big takeaway here is I don't care if Lewin is able to chip away at this guy because he was maybe a better friend of Rocky than Relli, and he relied to some degree on Rocky's business. Okay, you can't take Relli's voice off those calls and the things that he said about disappearing if he gets the money. That is what it is.
You got
And he
it.
says it wasn't me.
You got it. You got it. The case is, we're also talking about two different standards, right? The state has to prove that Relli is believable beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense doesn't have to prove that Wally is equally as credible. They just have to show that there's doubt about Relli's account of things. And there was doubt when Relli testified, and there's even more doubt now when we hear the recordings.
Yes.
I mean,
because before we couldn't. Remember, they just allowed Relli to hear them long enough to say, no, that ain't me.
that was AI.
AI. Hey, let's shift gears real quick while we got a moment. Here's a question I want to get to. This is from the other Karen. Sorry if already asked. I'm coming in late. The question, thoughts on the defamation lawsuit by Camila Vasquez. As you know, Camila Vasquez and Ben Chu are representing Relli in a defamation action. We played with it earlier today. I just got a copy of their answer to the first amended complaint. What's your thoughts representing Mr. Relli in a civil matter?
Different burdens. You'll get more discovery. You'll have an opportunity to question Rocky, assuming you'll get deposition and you'll get interrogatories. I'm never gonna say that Ben Chu and Camila Vasquez don't have tremendous talent and a winning track record, but sometimes hitching yourself to a wagon like Relli may have seemed like a good idea at the time, but maybe now once he's testified and you see him as a witness and as a plaintiff, as a protagonist, does he still have that same value? And I tend to think no. I tend to think when he was testifying, maybe on paper it seemed like a great case to bring against a wealthy defendant. But now that you've seen him, we can't unsee this. We can't unring that bell.
Yeah. I have to assume they're having some second thoughts. I did send an email to both of their offices just to ask them the question I asked you. Not that they would respond, but have you considered the impact of what we're hearing and seeing in this criminal matter on your civil case? Okay, they're back at it. Let's go back in there.
One of you has a commitment. I don't want to interfere with your lives, but Mr. Sajimi wasn't fine. You going back to Paris?
Missy, can you get us back in there?
6:30.
6:30
Yes.
tonight? 6:30 p.m.?
There's one that we had on hold for, I think, 8 on
That might be a lot better. All right. Again, I apologize to you all, but you know, I want to get finished. We all want. Yes.
Can I
39.
make a quick phone call for my rights?
I can't hear you.
Can I just make a quick
Of
phone
course.
call?
Why don't we take a break now? Kathy, you all can stretch your legs. If you want to make a phone call, make a phone call. Let's resume at 10 minutes to 4.
Your Honor, really, could the JA
Yeah.
inquire just privately? I'm guessing it might be difficult for the jurors to. I'm just hoping that we inquire in a more private setting, so they're able to.
If you can't do it, can you please let me know? It's okay. I know this is a big ask. Don't be shy. I'm seeing no hands. I'm going to assume that everybody
They're going to
is,
stay late to finish
on board.
Wally's testimony.
Yeah.
10 to 4, folks.
Okay, so that'll be interesting. I mean, obviously the judge thinks maybe they're getting close to winding down. I don't know with this witness. It's hard to tell because we haven't really heard all of the cross. So I don't know.
Well, I think you hit on something really important, which is, you can bang away at bias and motive and who's connected to which party and who knows who better. But the reality is, I mean, the recordings are the meat of the evidence here. They're the meat of his testimony. I mean,
I was trying to think, how could he have made it, I should say less, you could make it better, but less worse, less bad. If he had admitted it was him, if Relli said, yeah, that's me, I was mad, I was not getting the attention from Rocky that I thought I should get, that he could somehow water down what was said on those recordings. But by just flat ass denying that it's him, he's handcuffed.
Yes.
There's not a thing he can do.
Agreed. 1,000%. What a terrific point. There's so many things that a witness could say in that circumstance. And, the one thing you can't say if you're Relli is it's not me. And the one thing you can't add to that is somebody else used some type of technology to manufacture or mimic my voice, because you don't give yourself an out.
Yeah.
As you said, the out would be, I was upset. I'm just riffing, I was just talking to a friend and just kind of complaining. Look, even if you look at all of it, I never once said that it never happened. I talked about I was a critical witness for the state. Why was I a critical witness? Because it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Relli is an interesting dude. I've talked about it before in the terms of how uncomfortable he was on the stand, maybe because he's making the whole thing up, maybe he's exaggerating, but from his lifestyle, of braggadocio and machismo and saying things to impress people and doing things to impress people, sometimes violent. This is as far from his reality, sitting in a witness box, as he's ever been. And, clearly the way he would not shut up, he would challenge Tacopina. He would ask him questions.
Call him Tacopina.
And, you got admonished by the judge many times. I just think that he was that combination of all the worst things you want in a witness, out of control and so out of his element,
I've never seen a judge, I've never seen a judge react to, I was making notes about that. I've never seen a judge react to a witness almost unsolicited, unprovoked as the judge was to Relli. I've just tried a lot of cases in my day. There are times we've waited for a judge to scold or admonish a complainant or a witness. Have you ever seen that where it just stop? At one point I was looking where he yelled, stop! Don't insult him. Don't call him a liar. Don't call if the law, I don't care who's asking you the question, you tell the truth. There's no question before you. I mean, if you closed your eyes after a while, it almost sounded like my dad was talking to me as a kid. Stop talking back to your mom. Stop yelling at your mom.
Yeah. Wait till your dad gets home. So the one thing he didn't do, and maybe because he felt like if Arnold said it, he'd have to follow through, and that was the threat of some sort of contempt. He never threw that out there. And I think some judges get in trouble because they threaten it, but they keep trying to do everything they can but impose it, and it makes them look kind of weak. In this case, Judge Arnold just saying, no, stop talking, Well,
why? And he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to do sidebars. You can tell that. He's made it pretty clear. He doesn't want speaking objections. I am curious. What do you make of why is John Lewin on this case? I'm curious why he's on this case.
Yeah, we talked about that early on, and we did it really kind of in sympathy for Paulie P. I can't pronounce his last name, so I call him Paulie P. Here he is. He's got the case going. He's got it teed up. They are within weeks of trial. And, oh, by the way, John Lewin's going to parachute in. And technically, he's second chair. He's identified as second chair, but nobody watching this trial thinks John Lewin is second chair. So I have to believe that and perhaps it's because the new DA is in town. Remember, this happened after Hochman was sworn in December 1st. About a month later, Lewin comes in. Maybe his team, the DA's team, was looking things over and said, it's going to be a tough one. And we need a guy that's a little more of a bulldog, because clearly this Paulie P is a pretty affable guy. Seems like and I think Linda uses the word earnest. Like he's just in there.
Like
he's doing his job.
Working man.
Yeah.
He's working the case.
Exactly. And maybe somebody at the top said, we need something else in here. We need a Spitfire.
Can I tell you some of the things that I'm noticing from some of the, just comments here and there about the case, and I think to myself, if we were jurors, we might think that what Lewin did with Wally was, impactful. But by the time we're lawyers, so we're kind of analyzing it from that perspective. But if you're on the jury, as Relli was testifying, you're moving further and further away from the prosecutor. You're starting. This guy's just too argumentative. He's too difficult. He's too, he's been impeached. He's been contradicted. He's talking back to the lawyers. I mean, he got caught in a couple significant untruths, it appears, or at least, got jammed up in that way. What do you do then? And I'm thinking, if you're a juror and you're thinking that, when Wally gets up there, remember, you're not back to center, or you already have kind of a little bit of you were moved a little bit off of the 50-yard line. You're now closer to one of the goal lines or not. I'm wondering, do you look at Wally and think, now I'm starting to reshape my opinion back towards the state, or do you think this is overkill? I mean, I wonder. Relli was just so bad. I mean, he really that bad.
If I'm looking at a teeter-totter, right, it starts here. After Relli, it was bottomed out. I mean, it could not go any lower, right?
He's a zero.
So maybe you put Wally on this end of the teeter-totter, and he has some weaknesses in terms of maybe perhaps bias or motive. Okay, so maybe it comes off the ground slightly. I'm telling you, it's still, to me, common sense, just trying to look at it. Yeah, it's still near the bottom. It's almost touching the ground.
Right,
still.
I agree. So when I'm analyzing it, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, so if you could give a witness a score of 0 to 100, or let's say we have to give it a 1 to 100. Like an incredible witness is 100, moves the ball all the way down the field, and a 1 moves the ball,
barely
backwards to the 1 yard line.
It's the brotherly shove. It's very short.
So if we were to assign the testimony of Relli a score, what do people think it is? They think it was a 1? Is it a 2? Is it a,
Well, let's
can
assume
can you come back from a 1?
Everybody, will have their own variations on, but I think overall it's bad. So maybe somebody gives him a 5, somebody gives him an 8, Still bad.
But can you come back when you're the only witness? That's the only witness. I mean, that's the principal witness. Can you come back from a 1 or a 5? Can you come back?
No. And I think it's even more important in this case, Neil, because we seldom hear from victims or alleged victims because they're usually dead. We're covering more serious cases than an assault. So here you have not just the importance of an eyewitness, a potential alleged victim, but the only other person there. Yeah, we know there are a couple of strays wandering around, which we've not heard from yet. We may or may not. We don't know. But it really becomes the defendant versus this alleged victim. And the more you hear with Relli, the less you think Rocky needs to testify.
See, and what's interesting is I think that jurors expect defense lawyers to be aggressive and to be zealous. I think that we expect defense lawyers to do that, and they have to have a certain showmanship and charisma. But you also expect prosecutors to be right. I mean, you want prosecutors to sort of be clinical and to be and I don't want to, and likable. I mean, you're representing the state.
Yeah,
I don't like the grounds thing. I don't. I just. I didn't.
It's so Lewin. It is so Lewin that he is just so arrogant that he thinks he's. Why don't you just rule on them as well while you're talking about them? I'm sorry, Mr. Lewin. We'll defer to you, says the judge. So whatever. What do you think? Yeah,
and he has some skills. I mean, look
at
his cross-examination skills. You could see there. I mean, they're good. They're pretty solid. I mean, he's able to string together, but he doesn't have in the Durst case. He had witnesses that were reviled by the jury, including Durst, including witnesses who had. So he had carte blanche in a way to just go to town on these witnesses. You really think the jury wants anybody to go to town on Wally? Like there's a line you have to, right? I mean, you know that. You've tried cases.
And he made the points. He made some very good points.
And then get out.
Yes. Yeah.
And then leave it.
Hey, let me ask you, got another question here for you. First of all, thanks to Kay Schmidt gifting 5 Justice Serve memberships. We appreciate that. This one is from Rayette. The internet investigators are saying Relli has 2 outstanding warrants in the New Jersey area, being that it wasn't mentioned in court. Can we assume that this information will have no impact on the case? My short answer is you are correct. Go ahead and explain why that would be.
I agree. So you're allowed to cross-examine a particular a witness. You're allowed to raise information about a witness only in other acts or convictions, only under certain circumstances. One can only potentially raise convictions, and 2, you can only raise convictions if they touch upon moral turpitude or they touch upon dishonesty or perjury. And when we started the trial, the judge was very clear that he didn't want witnesses, didn't want the lawyers and the defense to explore. He kept asking for Relli's rap sheet. I want to see his rap sheet. I want to see what's on it. And then the prosecutor said that he doesn't have a rap sheet. And so the judge says, well, then that solves it. That ends it. There's not going to be any questioning about, any matters that did not result in a conviction and didn't touch upon moral turpitude. So to us, any warrants wouldn't come in.
That's a few steps. Yeah, that's a few steps removed from any chance at all of getting that in. Let me put this up here just so we can officially show. There it is, Kay Schmidt gifting the memberships. Thank you so much.
I did want you to know that if the California jury instruction on witnesses is California criminal crim number 226, and this is what the jurors will be told. You alone must judge the credibility or believability of the witnesses. In deciding whether witness testimony is true and accurate, use your common sense and experience. And then they go on in evaluating the witness's testimony. You may consider anything that reasonably tends to prove or disprove the truth or accuracy of the testimony. And then it goes on to how was the witness's behavior while testifying? Did the witness understand the questions and answer them directly? What was the witness's attitude about the case or about testifying? the witness make a statement in the past that is consistent or inconsistent with his or her testimony. How reasonable is a testimony when you consider all the other evidence in the case? Most of those do not help Relli with the way in the state's case. I'm not trying to look. I'm not trying to stand on the top of Relli's head. I just think as a witness, he just came across so bad.
I've never seen a witness that bad.
Yeah.
I've seen witnesses that will have a flare up, but on balance, they're okay. They're controlled, whether
Yes.
you believe them or not. But just again and again and again, being so inappropriate, so defensive,
Yes.
and it just makes you
It
not
doesn't
just
mean that the event
just-
didn't happen.
no, not at all.
Or that he's not being truthful. It just means that his appearance, his approach, his style, the willingness to receive his testimony and accept it as true is really, really compromised, in my view, by what how he's testifying. I mean, if he came to the door and tried to sell you something and that was his demeanor, you would close the door and say, like,
Yes.
we're not buying anything from that guy.
Yes. Yeah. And everybody in every setting is a salesperson to some degree. You're selling a story or, whatever it may be. He's not selling a story that anybody's buying. That's kind of the bottom line, I think. And the real question to me is, and let me know what you think, what else can the prosecution do other than go after Wally to try to rehabilitate their entire case?
I was wondering that. I was thinking about that because I don't know. I don't know what would take 2 or 3. I don't know what would take 2 or 3 weeks to try. We've just heard from the principal witness. We heard from the police officer that responded who said they didn't find anything. We heard from Relli, who, I mean, if Relli was a terrific witness, the case, would be advanced. When you start with your complainant, the alleged victim, the case is either gonna rest on that witness or it's gonna sink.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, who else is there? I mean,
Well, maybe the girlfriend, but there's some laundry there that would have to be, probably talked about outside.
do you have the
presence of
videos where the
jury.
guy misidentified himself and said that that was him, and then that wasn't him, and the girlfriend's not there, and then maybe she was off. Oh, she might have been off screen and off. I mean, and then you have this whole where he was he denied that he'd been to a gun range.
Mhm. He not just denied it, but that definitely did not happen. I mean,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
here it is in your face, exactly when it did happen. And then, I don't know if you noticed how today started, but it was the redirect with Polly P. First thing he says, again, Relly's still on the stand, he says, we talked yesterday, right? Meaning Sunday. You had to correct some of your testimony from last week.
I did make a note of that. That
They
is
go
that's so
into,
bad.
the revisionist history of this whole gun range episode. So,
I like to whenever we're talking about these things, I like to go back that remember, what other evidence is there besides, I mean, the state has really put in, it had a day and a half of full direct of Relli. I mean, and that was designed to be impactful. And remember how the direct examination of Relli ended with the prosecutor impeaching Relli in an argument about whether or not that was impeachment or whether it was contradiction. I don't know, Michael. I tend to think at some point that if you're a prosecutor and this is the case, that you might, I don't want to say this, I don't want to, but you might say to yourself, we can't proceed with this case given the evidence that we have. And maybe you'll get some credibility down the line in other cases where you decide you're going to forge ahead in spite of some. Relli was just that.
He was that bad. He was
just not a convincing witness.
He was a nuclear weapon in the prosecution's case. I'll tell you one thing for sure. They didn't do much pre-interviewing of this guy or testing him or putting him in some
No.
room and grilling him. Here's what you're going to see in court, and then at least they may have had a chance to tamp him down a little bit. But it's clear they didn't do any of that.
It's this is a very interesting case because, as you said, we have a lot of cases where we've talked about them, where you guys cover them, where we don't have a live victim who's able to take the stand and testify. And some of the times we don't have a lawyer who's obviously put in the time to develop the cross-examination that Joe did. And we don't have a judge who's willing to let the lawyers kind of go. And this is that kind of environment. I mean, who else could there be? Evidence techs? They already call it an evidence tech.
Yeah. I mean, there's very little
ballistics
forensics.
guy. What are the ballistics person's going to say? What? I mean, people that were other friends that happened to be there.
I guess they could say, those casings, that were found allegedly by Relli in the spot where the shooting took place. They're going to, confirm what weapon or what ammo they are from and what weapon would use those. And then they'll suggest that, well, that's, Rocky has that weapon. They found those type of bullets at Rocky's house, but I believe they're going to find out that the ones found at the scene don't match the ones like he had at his house. They're the same type, but otherwise didn't match. So
Yeah.
I think they're going to go there just because what else they got. I just don't think there's anything to get over the hurdle unless Rocky jumps up. Rocky jumps up in a Perry Mason moment and says,
"I'm sorry,
I can't take it anymore. I did it. That's about all I could see."
One of the interesting things that in the real world, I'm curious, would someone like Relli or Wally, would he ever ask Rocky? Would you ask him, hey, I know that was a big piece of John's cross, but would you ask, hey, did you do it? Did you shoot him? I can't imagine somebody would ask that. I just don't think that somebody would ask that question.
No, I don't think it. And again, as buddies or as those that deal in, they're all in the rap world, right? And it's all, there's a lot of violence, sometimes fictitious, sometimes real. And yeah, I think you're right. I don't think he's going to ask him, so crazy story. Did it happen? Did you really do that? Did you pull a gun? I don't see that either. It just doesn't. And
we don't do that in our
right.
job. We don't go to our clients and say, okay, come on, tell me everything. Tell me
just you and me. Go ahead. Tell me the story. Yeah. I don't see that happening. Well, I think, this case is a perfect example of why people are so enamored by the legal practice, the way it plays out in court, because you never know what is going to happen. And going into this case, a lot of people were like, who cares? It's a scratch, even if it happened, big deal. And now people, are riveted by the dynamics in that courtroom. So that's why they watch.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, I appreciate you being here to do that. I'd like to stick around for their overtime, but I can't either.
I had some big shoes to fill.
Are you wearing a Chanel or La Boudier shoes?
I didn't say expensive shoes. I just said big.
All right. Well, don't miss it. How often is your podcast on?
So we were doing it once. We had it going. We were once every couple of weeks. So we're going to be kicking it off again soon. I hope to have. I was actually going to reach out and talk to you about appearing on it and just get your.
That'd be fun. Have a three-way, as they say. Have a three-way on.
Talk about trials and hear what some of the highlights of the trials you've covered over the years and some of the best and worst moments of cross-examination are. So I know you've seen it all.
I've seen one or two, yeah, and it never gets boring, and it's always something happens. So check out the Killer Cross Exam podcast. Get that where you get your podcasts. I'm guessing it's out there everywhere.
Yes, sir. Killer Cross Examination. So
very cool. All
right, man.
Thanks, buddy. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Bye. All right, I'm gonna. I got a thing. So even though the court is going overtime, I am not going to be able to do that. I've heard from my sources, and these are not the same sources that told us about the judge and is concerned about the unethical prosecution of Rocky, but that LKB is having a wonderful day, and she'll be back tomorrow. Oh, before I forget, tomorrow night we will have Afi will be on. Afi, who was on Law and Crime with us many times. She's out in LA. She is in the courtroom for the Rocky battle. this is Rocky 5. I don't know. Some of the moments have stacked up to a Rocky movie. So yeah, so we'll join you tomorrow. I think we're doing that at 6:30. She'll come on at 7. Offie will. So Linda and I will get to it at 6. Probably catch the very end of the trial and go from there. So everybody have a great evening. Thanks again for joining. Don't forget to do that like thing and the subscribe thing and the notify thing and the comment thing. And we do try to get to the comments as best we can. Sometimes we get bogged down with stuff, but we're reading them, and we really appreciate it. And also the memberships like Kay Schmidt sent out there. So thanks for all that. We will see you next time. I'm Michel Bryant. Hey, try to do that.